You're watching Straight Line with Dan Rogers, President and CEO of Cherry Street Mission Ministries.
Welcome to today's show, and my name is Delray Bush. Today's topic is poverty, and why is that such an important topic right now, Dan?
Well, can I tell you, of all the topics that we could be talking about today, and the one that we believe needs the straightest line possible, it is the topic of poverty. Poverty is not only the cause of so many things, but it is the producer of so many things. Recently, matter of fact, just a week or so ago, I went to South Toledo and chatted with my good friend, Pastor Josh Hester, who is the senior pastor of Vision Ministries. Matter of fact, he and his wife, Joy, co-pastor Vision Ministries right on the corner of South and Broadway. Now, that's an important corner to know because we got him talking about poverty, and particularly whether money solves poverty or not, and ask if he would just get on camera and chat with our audience today about what are those realities going on in his neighborhood. So why don't we welcome Josh into the conversation today and hear what he has to say about his own neighborhood.
To answer the question, does money solve poverty? Absolutely not. You know, that's like taking a pig and saying, hey, let's put a little bit of lipstick on a pig. A pig's still a pig. And if I'm going to put money into something, like for instance, I don't know, you can see some of these houses in the background. You know, as a city, I believe, you know, it's wonderful that we want to revitalize it and make it look nice. But in 10 years, if we're not changing the people that are living in these houses, we can pour all the money we want to into these houses, and yet we're going to have tenants that are going to destroy them and not take care of them and that. And so we can pour money into impoverished places, and unless we change the heart of people, then really what we're doing is we're going to spin our wheels, because 10 years down the road, it's just going to be, you know, brought down again. So money is definitely not the solution. What we need is we need people. We need hearts of men and women who are willing to get their hands dirty and say, hey, you know, let's get involved in people's lives, because when people's lives are changed, then people change. So,
you know, I love Pastor Josh. He and Joy are absolutely fantastic people to have in our city, and the way that Josh comes off, not just on camera, but just in person, he's so enthusiastic and passionate about his community. Delray, did you see what his shirt read?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, it said, I love my city. You know, he loves Toledo, and that's wonderful.
He does, in fact, and that comes across in all that he and Joy do in South Toledo. But more than his T-shirt, he said something so very critical to us. He said that money is not the solution to poverty. Now, Delray, most people that you and I would sit and chat with through the ministries of Cherry Street, which you and I both serve at, believe that if we just could put money into a community, then particularly a community that's impoverished, that we could solve poverty tomorrow.
Yeah.
But in fact, you know that that's not true.
Yeah, I do. And I think it's especially interesting because so many people I speak with on a day-to-day basis in my work at Cherry Street, they even think, people who are in poverty think that poverty can be solved with money.
Correct. Yeah. But you know, as we said in the intro this morning, the reality is poverty is both the cause of things and poverty is the producer of things. Let's chat about that for a quick moment, because poverty is the cause of things. It's, in other words, poverty is from other things. Most of it is generational poverty. Like in the community where Josh and Joy live in South Toledo, that community is experiencing what we would refer to as generational poverty.
And what's that?
Well, generational poverty is where you have simply, my mom and dad didn't know any more or any less than what I know. And when I look at my grandparents were in the same shape as my parents were. Mostly live in the same neighborhood or mostly live in the same kind of neighborhood, because poverty also is very what we refer to as transient. So it moves from house to house, and families move from house to house, mostly, Delray, because, you know, if I'm experiencing poverty, I don't have enough money to pay my rent, and I get behind on my rents, I'm going to have to go find another place sometime soon. And mostly the relationship that I have with my landlord Now, this isn't true across the board, but most of the relationship that I have with my landlord is what we refer to as under the table, right? There's no real contract, there's no real lease. You know, I'm giving him what we agreed we could pay, but, you know, it's not recorded, and now I've lost my house. Well, I can move to another house because there's lots of those kinds of opportunities within the community that I live in. Now, I'm making this very first person, mostly because I grew up in poverty. You know, my family knew poverty, my grandparents knew poverty, and as far back as I can look in my family line, particularly on my father's side, there wasn't anyone who hadn't experienced poverty. So I also know this firsthand as well. When we look at generational poverty and we look at the war on poverty, in what ways, Del Rey, I would ask you, do you see the effects of poverty as it produces things at Cherry Street Mission Ministries every single day?
Sure, absolutely. There's different ways to look at poverty, like you said. With the multi-generational, sometimes it's just such a cycle. Well, my mom did it, and my dad did it when I turned 18. I got on food stamps. I got all these things. Maybe I didn't know how to get a job. Maybe I didn't have the skills or the wherewithal to even understand how to do all that. So, I mean, that's a lot different than first generational poverty, I think, where someone is homeless for the first time. They don't know how to operate. They don't understand the system. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, absolutely. When you look at Lucas County, the reality is 1 in 5 men and women and children are at or below the poverty line. Now,
That's
for
huge.
a family of 4, that's less than $21,000 of annual income.
Wow.
1 in 5, 20.5% of our population lives at and below the poverty line. Now, when you think of that reality, if you're at a mall, for example, or at a restaurant, you could just look around. As a matter of fact, we would encourage our viewers, next time you're out and about, just think about that number. Think about if you're at Bob Evans or someplace where there's groups of people, just look at the numbers of people that you see and start dividing by 5, right? That's how many people statistically are experiencing poverty in our community. So poverty is the result of things, and mostly it's the result of generational decay. But you know, in most cases, poverty is also very family, is a very family issue. When we talk about generational poverty, we're talking about really nothing more or less than what's going on from family to family. And when you put in those realities what we refer to as co-occurring issues, alcoholism, drug addiction, crime, right? This not only continues to cause homelessness, but it is now producing homelessness, right? That poverty is causing so many things. It produces so many things. You must see that in your daily work at Cherry Street.
I definitely do. I see it every day. I mean, it might be alcohol or drugs or mental illness that leads someone to be homeless, but it also it could have a lot to do with their family. Going back to your background and knowing a little bit about you since we worked together, how did that affect you growing up? Did you know that you were in poverty at the time you were in it, or how did it affect you as you aged?
Yeah, this is a great question, because there's like 4 questions inside of your questions. At least maybe there's 4 or 5 answers inside of the one question you asked. But did my family know that we were living in poverty? I certainly didn't. And I don't think, you know, most people who live in poverty don't know it. I mean, did I know we were poor? Probably. I bet you my mom and dad knew it and were closer to it than I would have known it. And I've actually had conversations with my dad about whether he realized that we were living in poverty, and he said no. If I changed the word and said, were we poor when I was growing up, he would say, yeah, of course, you know, because there are 6 of us, 6 brothers and sisters. And so there was never enough of anything to go around. Also, part of your question is, how did that affect me when I was growing up? Can I tell you something? It affects me still today. Growing up in poverty, you know, when you think about early childhood development, and even something so small as what's now being referred to as eco-biodevelopmental understanding around children, which means that whole eco is ecosystem, which means we're now thinking about not just what's going on behaviorally and not just what's going on developmentally in the child, but the environment that it's happening in. And of course, I hope we didn't spend a lot of millions of dollars trying to figure that out because, of course, the environment matters. But, it still affects me yet today. My wife will tell you that I still wonder what's for dinner every day. And I'm not so much curious about what we're having. I know that deep inside of me still is that poverty. Is that wonderment whether we'll have enough. Now, it's not, being manifest in modern day understanding of my own life because my wife and I are not in poverty. We're well above the poverty line. But yet that poverty mentality still lives in me today because of my early childhood experiences.
So I'm hearing you say that you even, probably skipped meals as a child and didn't have enough and went to bed hungry?
Well, certainly. I remember dinner being toast, more times than not. I remember lunch being oatmeal. And again, if you would sit at my table and say, geez, Dan, you're poor. Geez, Dan, you have toast and aren't you a poor kid? I probably would have looked at you very strange, and I think that is the realities of family and things generational is when it's happening to you, you don't think it's that strange. It just is what it is. And that's true for all human beings. But certainly, yeah, looking back on it, knowing now what I know as a full-grown adult, certainly. And am I grateful that my wife and I have been able to break that cycle of poverty and generational poverty for our children? I'm very grateful to God and to family and friends over the years that have made that help happen. And now we have 7 grandchildren, and I see that our grandchildren certainly aren't experiencing poverty either. But this is really the topic for today, right? Straight line solutions that this show is really all about is all about how can we help each other understand what is the straightest point between 2 lines, or actually between 2 issues. Issue 1 is the problem and issue 2 is the solution. And so what we would hope to accomplish today with our viewing audience is poverty affects all of us, directly and indirectly. Indirectly, it affects us because we perhaps have family and friends that are experiencing poverty. Indirectly also because poverty increases cost within communities. So it's an economic scale. And some of us are experiencing, even today as you're watching the show, you're experiencing poverty directly, right? It's happening to you right now. And what we're hoping to accomplish today is just peel back the onion a little bit and talk openly about the realities that poverty isn't solved by simply disciplines, right? Certainly work ethic and disciplines and saving money and getting a job are all fantastic disciplines, and we should teach them to one another all the time. But I wish these simple disciplines solved poverty. And I will tell you that in my own life, marrying the spouse that I married and the life that we've been able to live has been the result of Jesus Christ. I will tell you that straight up, that poverty is also an issue of spirituality, right? It's not just an issue of soul. That's why I still have some issues today, right? It's still embedded in me. But the Spirit of God connecting with my spirit has brought me out of the spirit of poverty. And without that, then no amount of money, as we heard Pastor Josh say in the video earlier, no amount of money is going to solve the lack of money that Dan Rogers or my family had on any level. But the introduction of God through Jesus Christ was the beginning point and the turning point for my own poverty.
Sure. I heard you say when you were speaking that there is a difference to you between poor and poverty, that you wouldn't say they're the exact same thing. Can you explain that?
Well, they're vocabulary words, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think poor is a more common word, and it's commonly used. Poor communities don't use words like poverty. They don't look at each other and go, hey, brother, you in poverty. You can say, hey, you poor, and it's just a common word. And because it's a common word, it's a more acceptable word. Poverty is just more clinical. It's more social,
It kind of hurts to hear it. Yeah.
You know, it does. And there is a stigma, Del Rey, let's be honest. There is a stigma to being labeled as a person who is experiencing or who is below a poverty line. Who wants to be below a line that you are now a negative statistic? Nobody likes that. But poor, you know, poor is poor. You know, poor means I don't have enough, or poor means that this is where I live. Poverty can carry with it a different stigma.
Yeah. How do you change the family tree? How would you tell someone to change the way that you've operated or your parents operated, or and make yourself better and change things?
Well, I don't know that anyone can by themselves. That's really the point. People experiencing any negative situation in their lives, whether it's addiction or poverty or any other thing that is helping someone spiral downwards, need, and we saw Pastor Josh say this in the video, they need someone else. They need someone to come along beside them, as we would say at Cherry Street Mission Ministries, and be the straight line to the crooked that's going on in my life. Certainly, as I indicated, there were people in my life all along the way that were just the straight line to me, right? They helped me see that the shortest distance between the problems that I was having and the solutions that I needed were available to me, and they walked with me every step of the way. The reality is we need someone with navigation skills. And many of our viewers today, you have navigation skills that other people need. You heard Pastor Josh say, and hear it again, that one of the great ways that you can be involved in your community is find somebody that you can simply be human with, you know, not the adjective, not the server, but the noun, the human being, the person that God really has created you to be, and whatever it is that you have, share and give that to someone else.
Someone just to be honest with.
Well, you have to be honest, and we don't exactly live in a world that enjoys honesty. We seem to value it. We seem to yearn for honesty. People are saying, hey, just be honest or be real. But I have noticed a lot of people aren't used to receiving honesty. But it really does require that we find a new place and a different way to care for ourselves and for people around us.
Sure. In poverty, going back again to your childhood and things like that, how did it affect you in school and as you were developing as a child?
Well, horribly.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, my grades, you know, were poor. Can I tell you something? I recently, and I mean recently within the last 2 years, I went back and looked at my high school transcripts. They are not what I remembered. I will be honest with you. I remember myself as a straight A student. You know?
Not so
and
much.
my wife will tell you this is probably not true. But my grades were absolutely horrible.
You can't concentrate if you're hungry, if you're going through things at home, I'm
Right.
sure.
Well, and yes, and beyond the hunger and beyond the distractions of what generational poverty creates within a family structure, also the issues around living in neighborhoods that are poor or in impoverished areas. Because in communities that are experiencing poverty, Del Rey, there is what we refer to as the hustle, and that's not the dance. Everybody in poverty has a hustle. That's why if you've ever gone to a third world country, you can like rap on anyone's window and they'll sell you a Coke, you know. Why is that? Well, because in America, in first world order, we just simply call that hustle, right? Like everybody is selling something, and you can get whatever you want from almost anyone in Central City and in impoverished neighborhoods. So it's not just my grades were poor because I was hungry. It was, Del Rey. You are absolutely right. But it was also because you're hanging with the wrong crowd. You're involved in things that you shouldn't be involved in, and I was distracted for sure.
Yes.
The last thing I was thinking about were my grades.
Sure. I mean, even walking to the bus stop, I can imagine, would be a daunting feat sometimes, or walking to school. You pass a lot of things that can kind of catch you.
Well, absolutely. And for a period in my life, I was the person that you were walking by. So there was a time in my life where there were groups of people that I didn't want to pass by because I would be harassed, or I would be, have my lunch money stolen, or something along that line. And then there was a time in my life where I was that guy. There was a time where I was the guy that people walked around to get way past me, because of the violence and the poverty that I grew up in. I was reaching for my own solutions, for sure.
Sure. And I mean, when you become that guy, it's probably lack of choices, wouldn't you say? There's not a lot of choices if you are living in poverty.
Well, poverty causing homelessness is exactly right, what you said. That is all about less options and less access. And if you're a person who already has experienced generational lack of access and options, then trust me, you're going to be against the people who clearly have access to things and have options in their lives. And that may result in theft because you want their access or you want their options, whether it's a cell phone or a car or money in their safe. And you may access it that way. And again, that's also a part of the hustle that we have every single day. We went right back to Josh after that great video, and we asked him another question because he and Joy pastor Vision Ministries in South Toledo. We asked him simply if you could say anything to Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan about what are action steps. How can people really get involved? What would you say to them? And here's what he had to say about that.
Great.
The call to action, people that would consider themselves Christ followers, or maybe they're on the new journey of being a Christ follower, is, we can't sit on the sidelines and think somebody else is going to do that. I think that's probably one of the biggest things, is we think that somebody else is called to do this when God has called every single individual to be their purpose, to do their role, to be a part of something. And so if every single person did what they were called to do, and so whatever gifting that is, I have the gift to teach, and so I'm going to use this not just to make a paycheck, but I'm going to use this to empower. I have a gift of craftsmanship, or a gift of teaching, a gift of whatever. Call to action would be us stop praying for God to do something and us actually putting our feet forward and doing something. There's this song, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, and they play it on Caleb all the time, and it says, in the song, the guy is basically saying, all these things in poverty, and he's shaking his fist at God and saying, do something, God. And God said, I did. I created you. I created you to do something. And so that's the real call to action. We were created to be his hands and his feet. And so the call to action is for us to do something. And so whatever that might look like, getting our feet and our hands dirty.
Del Rey, did you hear what he said? He said two dynamic things that I believe we know, but we should activate. Number one, we should pray. There isn't anything greater that we can do, and we almost always use the word prayer with the word just, like just pray, like your mama's just a mama. The reality is, prayer isn't, as Oswald Chambers would say, isn't the thing you do to get something else done. It is the thing. So prayer cannot be emphasized too much. I encourage people, put your hand on your chest and start with you. What does God want to say to you about the poverty going on in your own life? You may have never experienced poverty in the way that is related to money, but perhaps you have a poor spirit. Perhaps there's something going on impoverished in your life. And then the second thing he said, Del Rey, was he said, get involved, right? Which is so very true, isn't it? Because when you pray, the Holy Spirit of God is absolutely going to engage you in action steps. He always does, doesn't he?
Yes.
I mean, have you ever had a time in your life where when you prayed that God didn't just give you an idea that you should go up and do something about it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would say daily. I mean, in my daily prayers, God is always showing himself and in the work that he wants me to do.
Absolutely. So here's the thing. So when you pray, and and I encourage folks, try the knees. There isn't anything that you can't accomplish in a bended position before God. As a matter of fact, my wife and I have exercised this from more than one occasion when we've had our moments of intense fellowship, you know, where we just get on our knees and we pray. There's something of humility there, and in that position, I'm not saying it's a mandate. I'm just encouraging you today as you're watching the show that prayer in some kind of a prostrate or humble position is a great place to start. Stay in prayer long enough, because prayer is more about you hearing than you speaking. Listen to what God has to say, and try not to get up from your prayer time with God. And it'll be awkward for a moment, but try it until you have a sense of what He's saying to you. And if the topic in your prayer life today is poverty, not only the poverty that's going on in your life, but poverty that's going on in the community and whom you love, like Josh's shirt said, I love my city. If you wear that t-shirt behaviorally and spiritually, then you know what he's talking about, and you know what we're talking about here today. The reality is, you and God want to have a conversation, and God so desperately wants to tell you things about your city and the poverty that's going on around you. And He certainly wants you, as you put your hand on your own chest, He wants to heal the poverty going on in your own soul and your own spirit. Take it from someone who, as we said today, has experienced that and experienced both sides of it. I now sit at tables that I used to be on the other side of. People ministering and serving me out of the troubles that I was experiencing. And now God has allowed me to sit on the other side of the table and help people see a path and a migration from the things that they're doing. So many of you continue to support Cherry Street Mission Ministries. And can I encourage you today, prayer is so very critical to your support of Cherry Street. Every single day, we need men and women that will come along beside of us, not just in prayer, but physically in prayer. And you could actually come do that. You realize that? That you could actually come to Cherry Street and pray for people every day at Cherry Street physically. As a matter of fact, we would encourage you to come down and pray for every bed every day. Wouldn't that be awesome for you to come do that? I wonder what the Lord might say to you about that. And then certainly, we need your financial support now more than ever. The numbers of men and women that Cherry Street Mission Ministries is serving because of your support are staggering, and they have been staggering now for years. But the opportunities are just as great. As I will tell you that the opportunities are even more fantastic than the numbers that we experience every single day. Your gift of whatever size, I guarantee you, always goes to people in need, and it goes immediately to people in need. And there's so many easy ways that you can do that. First of all, go to our website at cherrystreetmission.org. Wouldn't it be great for you to just click on that "How can I get involved" button, or "How can I help" button? I guarantee you in 2 or 3 clicks, you'll be at a solution. You could volunteer. You could actually put yourself in the pathway of another individual. You could serve that person. You could actually come and serve our staff who are experiencing God at many varying levels, but are doing things against the backdrop of enormous difficulty because of the men and women that we serve, not just by the quality of the problems that they're facing, but by the very nature of our work itself, where we operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So can I encourage you to be involved through Cherry Street Mission Ministries and find a way that your involvement can do something great and something fantastic every single day through Cherry Street.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.